My name is Jennifer Sharpie, and I am the Executive Director of the Colorado Foundation for Agriculture. And I'm actually working out of my home office in Westminster, Colorado, in the Denver area. We do the Agriculture in the Classroom program. So we work with students like you all across Colorado and help them understand their connection to their food, fiber, fuel, and natural resources. These things that we rely on every day, the clothes you wear, the food you eat, your desk, the paper you write on, all of that comes from agriculture. And we want to make sure we thank our sponsors for this program. And the book, I believe you guys have received your book. It was paid for through the book itself was a project with the Bessie Minor Swiss Foundation and the Fence Post Ag News. And both our author and our illustrator both work for the Fence Post. And then we have the Colorado Farm Bureau Women's Leadership Committee, the Colorado Cattlemen, Bank of America, and various other donors. So all of these folks have made this program possible to be able to visit you today and to send you that book. Janie, let's get to our guest reader. I'm going to spotlight you. If you would go ahead and introduce yourself and talk about your connection to agriculture.
Absolutely, Ms. Sharpie. Thank you for asking me to do this. I'm super excited about it. My name is Janie VanWinkle, and I am the fourth generation to produce beef in Western Colorado. Beef is highly nutritious, brings us a lot of zinc, iron, and protein. I like to remember it as ZIP. I live in the Grand Junction area in Mesa County, and to kind of give you some idea of where that's at, we're very near the Utah state line. So we're far west. We had some snow this morning and some rain, so that's a good thing that's happening for us. We're currently having a lot of baby calves on the ranch here, so that's really exciting as well. But again, I'm looking forward to connecting and talking with the students in Fowler. So good morning to all of you.
Good morning. Hi.
Great. All right, so I'm going to introduce our book. So the book is called Still Good, The Faces of Family Agriculture. And this book actually features real Colorado farmers and ranchers. And the illustrations are from real photos as well. It's a new book. It was just written and published here at the end of December of 2020. So you guys are some of the first folks to see it. And in the story, a little boy finds his grandpa's photo album from the 1950s. Have any of you guys seen like your grandparents or maybe your parents' older photo albums? Yeah. And kind of looked at those photos? Yeah. Oftentimes they're black and white. Oftentimes those photos are not quite as sharp as what we would normally see. And they may be a little ragged or a little pixelated. And that's because photography technology in the 1950s is not near what it is today. We've made some vast improvements with digital photos to have much more higher quality photos. Anyway, as they look through the photo album, the grandpa shares stories about when he was a boy and how agriculture was in the 1950s. And then the boy has this great idea to decide or to think about what agriculture is like today. And so he reaches out to some friends and he gathers some new photos and some new stories. And throughout the book, they compare and contrast the two eras of agriculture. So agriculture today versus what it was like 70 years ago. And what they realize is that agriculture may be different, but it's still good. So as you're listening, pay attention and think of some questions that you might have either about the book or about Janie and her ranch and raising cattle there in Grand Junction and what's that like. And then we'll have that sort of question and answer session at the end, and we'll have some questions for you too.
And make sure you guys listen because there's a place that I bet almost all of you have been or at least driven by lots of times in this book. So when she's reading, make sure to listen and like be watching for somewhere local.
Yeah. Great. All right, let's start.
All right, and I should just say to you that my friend Rachel Gable wrote the book, and it's very much an honor for me to get to read the book to all of you. So I'm excited about this. So let's start. Still Good: The Faces of Family Agriculture by Rachel Gable. The leather photo album creaked as the boy opened it, sending dust swirling into the light from the attic window. Out in the yard, he could see cattle milling around the pens and the rows of corn dancing in the wind. He flipped to a yellowing page with a black and white photo. Below it, someone had neatly written, "The Boys and Patsy, 1950. He turned to another photo and another before deciding he needed to know more. He knew exactly who would know more. Did you guys just hear the cow ball? Can you hear her?
No.
Oh, okay. Shoot.
Yeah.
He opened the screen door to the farmhouse and it groaned. He stepped onto the porch and the old dog and the old boards groaned. A quilt flapped in the breeze on the clothesline. The boy sat down on the porch swing beside his grandfather, who was oiling a shovel handle. He looked over and saw the book in the boy's lap. "I haven't seen that book for a while," Grandpa said. "Farming sure is different now than it was." They opened the book to the photo of the boys and the milk cow. The older boy was hunkered on a little stool milking a cow. The younger boy had his thumbs hooked in the straps of his overall, a dog near his feet. "Old Patsy," Grandpa said, pulling the book and the boy closer. "We always had a milk cow around. She was a shorthorn. I used to weigh every bucket of milk to fill 10-gallon cans. We would sell those cans, and my dad would give me a few cents from the milk check. That was back when even a few cents could buy something." The boy turned the page to a photo of a long-legged boy standing next to a man with a weathered hat in front of an old tractor. Grandpa looked at the photo and leaned back in his chair. "That old tractor could really run," he said. "It was hot on that metal seat in the summer, and there was no heat when it was cold. That tractor is still out in the barn. Maybe I'll teach you to drive it sometime. They could sure build things to last." The next photo was of a young boy standing proudly next to a steer. Grandpa studied the photo and sat back in his chair, tipping his straw hat back on his head and taking a long drink of tea. At his feet, the dog sighed. "That boy, not much older than you, was me," he said. "I took that Hereford steer to the fair and won a blue ribbon. That fall, I led the steer down the alley at the Denver Union stockyards. The buyers would all sit on the wooden fence rails that lined the alleys. I stood up straight and led that steer, hoping those buyers would bid. I couldn't understand the auctioneer's chant. That's what it's called when they talk so quickly, but they sure seem to." Grandpa turned another page to a photo of a young woman in a dress behind rows of pumpkins and baskets filled with apples, zucchini, potatoes, onions, watermelons, and peppers. "This is your grandma when she was young," he said. "Her dad farmed, and it took him and the boys all summer to irrigate the produce. It was like watering our garden, but they did it for entire fields. Each morning, your grandma would drive the old pickup to the farm stand where she would sell the produce they grew. That's where I met her. I ate a lot of vegetables that summer, looking for excuses to see her." He paused and smiled at the photo. This was back when farmers irrigated with shovels and set tubes by hand, he said. There were no pivot sprinklers. It was back when irrigating was a full-time job all by itself. You couldn't buy fruits and vegetables anytime you wanted. They were available when they were in season, and people stored them in root cellars or put them up in glass canning jars, like Grandma does with her dilled green beans and jellies. The boy smiled at the mention of Grandma's jars of green beans. They were his favorite. He turned the page, the photo of a young man trailing sheep through a small town. A horse pulled a round-topped herder's wagon behind the ewes, and dogs and kids on horseback were on all sides. That family has been raising sheep near Meeker for nearly 100 years, he said. They took them high in the summer and brought them back down in the fall. Herders stayed with the sheep and protected them from bears, wolves, and mountain lions, and kept them together and safe. It takes a lot of work to raise lambs, but I'm glad people still do it. The boy thought about wool socks in the winter and Grandma's lamb chops at Easter. Me too, the boy said. We've bought a lamb from them every year, as long as I can remember, Grandpa said. We always knew where our meat came from, raised either on our farm or a neighbor's. When this photo was taken, there weren't refrigerated trucks to haul meat across the country. The next photo was a handsome young man standing next to an airplane. Who is that, Grandpa? Well, son, that's me, he said. You are a pilot? The boy said, sitting up straight now, eager to hear more. Grandpa scratched the dog that was now inching closer to him in search of a cool breeze. Yep, he said. You know how the yellow airplanes spray the neighbors' fields? The boy nodded. Well, I used to do that. I'd fly low, buzzing the fields for the farmers who had hired me. I learned to fly in the war, so when I came home, I figured out a way to get back in the air. No, excuse me. It was dangerous, and it still is, but it was a thrill and an important job. When I flew near our farm, I would waggle my wings back and forth to say hello to Grandma. As summer turned to fall, the boy returned to school, though he thought he would learn more on the porch with Grandpa and helping water the garden and fixing the old tractor and checking the cows than he did at a desk. The boy had asked to borrow the leather book and had carried it home carefully, protecting it like it contained treasures and knowing it did indeed. As he stepped into his own house, he had an idea. After school, the boy did his chores, ate dinner, then sat at the kitchen table, neatly writing letters and folding them into envelopes, which he put in the mailbox at the end of the drive as he waited for the bus. Each day, he hustled off the school bus and checked the mailbox. He flipped through the bills and catalogs for seed, bulls, and tractors. Finally, one day there was an envelope with his name on it. 5 more envelopes slowly arrived, and he sat at the kitchen table with the leather book open and worked as his mother moved about the kitchen and as the ag news played on the television. It was Friday when he carried the leather album down the driveway to his grandpa's porch. A quilt was drying on the line, dancing as the wind blew it. The dog and the old man stood and watched the boy run toward them. He bounded up the stairs and held the leather book out to his grandpa. Take a look, he told Grandpa, his heart beating fast from running and anticipation. Grandpa opened the book and saw, again, the photo of two boys and a roan milk cow. On the facing page, the boy had carefully placed a color photo of Holstein cows in a spotless milking barn. The stainless steel gleamed, and two men walked alongside the cows, ensuring the robotic milker cups attached correctly. "Well, I'll be," Grandpa said, studying the photo. "Where did you find this?" "I wrote a letter to the family who owns Chapin Family Dairies asking for a photo of them milking cows," he said. "Mr. Chapin told me the robots milk the cows and test the milk, and they're able to safely milk more cows and make sure the milk is clean and the cows feel good. It only takes a few people to milk a lot of cows." "Robots, I'll be darned," Grandpa said. "They even have a robot to push the feed close to the cows so it's always there and fresh. And big tanker trucks pick up milk every day," the boy said. "Dairy farming is different now than it was when you milked Patsy, but it's still good." Grandpa turned the page to the photo of the long-legged boy standing by the tractor. On the facing page were two men, father and son, in front of a combine and tractor hooked to a disc. Behind them, Grandpa could see a center pivot sprinkler against the blue sky. "That's Mark Arnish and his dad," the boy said. "They came from Germany to grow sugar beets in 1951, but now they grow wheat and they have the third generation working with them too." Grandpa held the book close, studying the modern combine and tractor, and he smiled when he looked back at the black and white photo, remembering the little red tractor. "Much different than what we had," he said. "Different, but still good." The next page was the photo of Grandpa as a boy and his Hereford steer. Next to it, the boy had taped a photo of an auctioneer in a crisp shirt and an evenly creased hat, leaning close to a microphone with his hand pointing to the crowd, calling bids. In the ring was a fancy set of Hereford heifers. Next to the auctioneer sat two people with cell phones and computer screens in front of them. "Miss Robin at Livestock Exchange sent me this photo when I wrote to her," the boy said. He pointed to the computer. "That's how people at home can buy cattle on their computer or phone," he said. Grandpa grinned and said he'd never heard of such a thing. "They still chant and take bids, and Miss Robin said they still serve cherry pie, and it's really good," the boy said. Grandpa smiled when he turned the page to the photo of Grandma as a girl. Next to it was a photo of a young woman in shorts and a t-shirt, leaning on a crate of cantaloupes. "Mrs. Gail Knapp sent me this photo," the boy said. "They've been selling produce at their farm stand for over 30 years. Their melons are trucked to grocery stores in several states because they produce more than they can sell at their stand, and not everyone wants to buy their produce can come to their farm. They have Rocky Ford cantaloupes and watermelon, peppers that tumble in the roaster over a flame, sweet corn, okra, onions, potatoes, peaches, and jars of apple butter. Mrs. Knapp said the apple butter they sell is made exactly to my grandma's famous recipe, and it's the best around." They both knew that was one of those things that hadn't changed and was still good. On the last page was the photo of the sheep trotting through town. On the facing page was a new color photo of a young boy following the sheep through the same small town. "That is Aretheus," the boy said. "He is the fifth generation of sheep producers on their ranch. They still trail ewes like they did when his grandpa was his age. Some things change only a little and are still good." Grandpa smiled and sat back in his chair with the leather book closed on his lap. Together, the two looked over the farm and thought of the farms just beyond their view. With pivot irrigation, big tractors, and the setting sun, knowing it was different, but still good.
Yay, what did we think? Did we like that story?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good story. Yeah. Thank you.
I like it.
Option.
You guys recognize naps and
Yeah.
nappy boards.
So one time we went to a party with Nick Nap and he couldn't even stand up
Okay,
anymore.
excuse you.
What?
Not an appropriate story, right? Thank you.
Yeah, you guys recognize the Nap Farm, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty cool. What was your favorite part? What was someone's favorite part in the book? What story did you like the best? This is kind of a lot of stories within a story.
I like the one where I was talking about the little red tractor.
Okay. How about the young lady in the pink shirt? What did you like the best?
Oh,
Polly? I liked it when the same as the red little tractor.
I like the one where like the little boy was sitting on the cow.
I like the part with the cantaloupe.
Yeah, the part with the cantaloupe. I just like the whole story.
Yeah.
I like
So have some of you, have you seen some things that you would say is different now than it was in the 1950s around your area as far as agriculture? What looks different?
tractors, electronics. Yeah, about all.
That's
Roads. I do schools, and I being detectives. And when it says that black and white picture, I can say that's snap. That is totally snap.
How about, another question I have for you is, have any of you been to the sale barn and heard the auctioneers chant?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, have any of you at home seen your parents buy something over the internet or on the computer? Anybody see it? So in the black t-shirt, right in the middle, in the black t-shirt, tell me about that. Yep, you.
In the sale house in Fowler, they were trying to buy a camper.
Oh, okay. All right. Very good. What, in the red shirt to the right of the gentleman who just spoke? Yep, you're the one. So this question's for you. What does it mean to irrigate a field?
Water it.
Okay. How do they water around Fowler?
Well,
How do the,
there's a lot of gated pipe or there's some pivots. We used to do tubes.
okay. We used to do tubes also, and we now irrigate here in Western Colorado. A lot of gated pipe is also what we use here in Western Colorado as well. Where can you buy fruits and vegetables? How about the guy in the blue? Yep, with your hand up, way in the back. Tell me, where can you buy fruits and vegetables that have been grown in Colorado?
Farmer stands, the grocery store.
How do you know if they've been grown in Colorado?
They usually say.
Okay,
Stickers on them.
right, the Colorado Proud stickers. Yep, that's true.
You guys are a smart class. I'm impressed.
Yes.
I mean, it's what you get for living by a couple fields. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
And if you have a couple of family members that are pretty big ranchers and farmers, you know a lot about agriculture.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I see someone to the far left in a light green shirt, I think, or jacket. I can barely see. Okay, so this question is for you. So in the book, we saw a family trailing sheep through Meeker. And I'm wondering if you guys, do you see sheep around Fowler?
A few now and then. I mean,
A few?
there's not
Okay.
really any big herd.
There's a big
Yeah, I mean,
triple C farm.
yeah. You notice how we almost not asking you.
How about, do you ever see herds of cattle being trailed down the road around Fowler?
Yeah, little bit every now and then.
Once in a while. Have you ever gone through one of those herds in your car?
Yeah, my mom. Through the mountain.
What was that like?
It was a weird experience, especially since there's sheep all around you.
Okay. All right. Okay, do you have some questions for me here about our ranch here in Western Colorado, or questions that you thought about from the book? Do you have any questions for me? In the black shirt.
So, what kind of cattle or animals do you raise?
We have cows. We have about 550 mama cows, and they're the white ones. Most of them are white. They're Charolais. The Charolais breed came from France many years ago. My grandpa actually brought some of the first Charolais to Western Colorado when I was a little girl. I remember them getting here, and that was in the 1960s. I remember them getting here. And we still, my husband and I still have Charolais. And our son, who is currently in college in Kansas, is returning to the ranch in May. He'll be graduating, and he intends to raise registered Charolais as well. I see a question right in the front. Yeah.
How long were you a farmer for?
Goodness, if I tell you that, I'll tell you how old I am. So I'm fourth generation. I was born and raised on a ranch, so I've been doing it my whole life, which is 60 years. In the middle, in the front, you had a question.
Does your son play any sports?
He played a little bit of basketball when he was like from, from third grade through eighth grade. He played basketball. He's very tall. He's about 6'3", 6'4", and he's been very tall since he was little. He became taller than me when he was about you guys' age. And in eighth grade, he decided that he thought he could have a better option to get a scholarship to college through livestock judging. He was very active in 4-H and then FFA. And so he did livestock judging instead of playing basketball. And to the left of the last question, in the dark blue shirt.
What do you guys produce, like fruits wise, if you do that?
Like fruit wise?
Yeah.
Well, so at VanWinkle Ranch, we don't raise any fruit. We raise a lot of hay to feed to the cows. We raise some oats to feed to the cows. But here in the Grand Valley, around Grand Junction, we do have a lot of fruit. A lot of our neighbors raise peaches. They also raise grapes, some apples, some pears. And my favorite are cherries. I love the cherries in the spring, late spring, early summer. And that's only if it doesn't freeze. Sometimes the fruit trees, their buds get frozen in April and May, and then there's no fruit. So that's one of the things that farmers have to contend with is the weather.
Who's heard of Palisade peaches? So Palisade peaches come from over on the western side of the mountains, western side of Colorado, on the western slope near where Janie lives. That's where they come from.
Some of my good friends raise peaches.
Yeah.
One more question I see.
So how do you guys gather your cattle?
Well, that's a good question. We ride horses to gather cattle. And our cows are scattered out in the summer. They scatter over about 39,000 acres. And so a lot of times people say, well, how do you know where to go? And I always tell them that you kind of develop a second sense about where they're at. You just kind of know. I don't know a better way to say it, but you just kind of know where they're at. But sometimes we spend anywhere from 10 to 12 hours a day on a horse. And I got a little app on my phone to track how many miles that I go. And so typically we'll go like 16 to 22, 23 miles a day on a horse.
Cattle like routine. They like to do the same things. They like to go in the same places. So, and they learn where are the better parts of a pasture to be if it's going to rain or if it's going to be windy. They'll go down in the draws or into the trees or those different areas. So over time, and with Janie there and their family being on that land for so many generations, they've learned kind of those patterns of what the cattle will do.
We also use salt to manage them, to get them to go where they may not like to go, but we want them to go. So we'll put salt in that area and then they go up there. It's like candy. Like you'll go where there's a Snickers bar, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Any other questions for me?
I think we're good.
Okay.
We're good.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for your time. And thank you, Janie, for your time and doing a great job of reading the book. It's been fun visiting with you all. I wish we would be in person, but this is the next best thing. So hope you enjoyed the book. Hope you learned a little bit about agriculture. And yeah, just have a great rest of your day and enjoy your weekend.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.